we're back. This is episode 21 of the Tap Room podcast. I'm your host, Mike. I'm a little burnt out. Had a fun weekend up at my sister's house. Drove up. She's in like the Central Valley. So got to go up there, spend the weekend with her. Also got to record an episode out in Clovis with Big Pop Bruin with Ryan Hansen. Really good dude. Like, he was just down to earth. Like, we hung out. We knocked back some of his beers. We also had some beers from Crow and Wolf. Just an overall, just a really solid dude. We had a really good time and might be doing some collabs later on down the road. Him and I were talking about doing something in December, but that episode will be out in 2 weeks from today, which is Sunday the 9th. So that'll be out in a couple weeks. So hope you guys enjoy that one. This week's episode with my guest was Grant McAuley. And I've been talking about, having him on the show. And it was, I nerded out so hard with him talking about the Braves. So my apologies that we do talk a little craft beer. Like, we talk about the kind of beers you can find out there, like some places you can go if you're in the Atlanta area or if you're visiting the Atlanta area. But yeah, I nerded out hard. We talked mostly about the Braves. We also talked, a little about the All-Star game, and then also, some of the other leading teams out there in baseball or Major League Baseball. But let's start out the episode. Let's start out like we always do. I had a lot to drink this weekend, so I'm gonna take it a little easy today. Got a couple seltzers from Brewery X. Since I have not reviewed those on the show, I got a succulent sipper. Oh, actually, no, this first one, sorry, that this isn't a succulent sipper. This one is the Huckleberry Craft Hard Seltzer, coming in at 5%. This was big time Huckleberry flavor in this one, but let's crack it open, eh? Oh, yeah. It's a nice crack, eh? Here we go. Oh, yeah. Gotta love that sound. Ooh. A little bit of whiskey last night. A lot of beer. I don't even know what else I was drinking. I think there was some Crown. I think there was some Jameson. Tried that Jameson Orange. It was actually really solid. It was pretty good, but let's focus on this Craft Hard Seltzer right now. Let's do it. Oh, yeah. I'm not, I do enjoy seltzers. I don't drink them as often. But this is something it's super fruity. Obviously, Huckleberry being on there smacks you right in the face, which is good. Anytime you put something on there, you want to make sure it tastes like it. This is really good. I want to say usually we take these ones when we go golfing with the boys too. But this one's solid. It's a big fat 10 for me. Brewery X always nails it when it comes to the seltzers. They always kill it in that respect. Yeah, definitely a big fat 10, and it's only 5%. I mean, you can smash these all day. Just be responsible, huh? But yeah, it's really good. Definitely something if you're in the Anaheim area, Brewery X, their pizza's great. Their seltzer game is really good. Obviously, their hazies, their Pilsner, stuff like that. They have a ton of great selection of food and great selection of, obviously, beer and seltzers. Merch is really cool too. And honestly, if you go down there, you get to support Jizzy, since he works there. So yeah, definitely get down there if you're in the Anaheim area. Check out Brewery X. But all right, time to jump into, because it's technically, the All-Star game, the Home Run Derby is tomorrow for baseball. That's kind of why I wanted it to be a more baseball-centric episode this week, especially with, Grant being on. We get to talk about the Braves and stuff like that. But I did want to talk about, since the Derby is first, I did want to talk about the Home Run Derby. We'll see who the participants are. I forgot. I know Pete Alonso's in it because I think he's won back-to-back, I want to say. But yeah, we've got Pete Alonso, Vlad Guerrero, Vladdy Jr., Luis Robert, Julio Rodriguez, Adolis Garcia, Mookie Betts, Randy Rosarina, and Adley I'm assuming it's Rutschman, something like that. I don't know if anyone's ever won it 3 times in a row. I know there's been a couple that have been back-to-back winners, or I could just be completely wrong about that. But Obviously, people out there know I don't care for the Mets, not even a little bit. But I think it comes down to Pete and Vladdy, but I'm not sure if they're actually who's playing each other when. Let's see who the matchups are. Let's see. Mookie's. So it's Robert against Rutschman, Garcia against Rosarina, Betts versus Guerrero, and then Pete Alonso versus Julio Rodriguez. That should be pretty fun. I always liked watching the Derby. It's always, it's fun to kind of see the players, don't have to, get a couple days off, get to actually just, get out there and just have a good time and enjoy the sport, that they love to play. So that's always fun to watch that. I think it's gonna be a fun one to watch. I'm not sure what time that starts tomorrow, but it's usually around like 5:00 Pacific time. So I'll be checking in on that. Also, the All-Star game is on Tuesday. I always used to like how the All-Star. I know some people didn't, but I used to like how the All-Star game, the winner of that, whether it was National League or the American League, would determine who got home field advantage in the playoffs. Not in the playoffs, but in the World Series. So I always enjoyed that. But I did want to talk about too, like some of obviously the teams that are, who's all doing what right now when it comes to the division winners. I went back and I listened to one of the episodes I did. I think it was a WrestleMania episode where we made our picks. And let's see. I want to say I did pick Tampa Bay not to win the division, but to make it to the World Series. And they're playing good baseball. They're 58-35 right now. I did pick the Yankees to win that division, and they're about 7.5 back, so that's not looking all that great. But that's just a tough division. Like, Tampa Bay's good. Baltimore's playing really good baseball right now. They're kind of on their heels, only 2.5 back. Cleveland and Minnesota are tied in the Central, and in the AL West, Texas has a 2-game lead over Houston. Seattle 6 games back, and the Angels are kind of in a free fall. They've lost 5 straight. They just got absolutely throttled yesterday by the Dodgers. We were watching that game and watching the Braves game. Braves are in first in their division in the NL East. They're 60-29. They do right now have the best record in baseball. I just hope that they can keep it up. And Max Fried is making his rehab start on Sunday. Actually, today, his first rehab start since getting injured. Miami's right there though. I mean, not right there. They're 8.5 back, but Miami, that's got to be my biggest surprise, I feel like, of the season so far, being the Marlins. They got some good young talent there, and they're only going to get better, especially if they can keep these pieces together. Philly, about 12 back right now, and the Mets, I love it, 18 games back. That's just great, especially for Scherzer, because that guy's not going to say anything. But the NL Central, man, the freaking Cincinnati Reds just keep on winning. They're a fun, exciting team to watch, and they're so young. They're up. They have a game lead on Milwaukee. I still really like I like Milwaukee's, like some of the rotation. Corbin Burns, I feel, is really good. And another big shocker too is honestly Arizona. I mean, the Dodgers are only half a game back in the division, but the Diamondbacks, they got a good young team too, especially guys like Corbin Carroll. And that's, good for them. They're really coming around. So, really excited to watch, the All-Star game, and honestly just excited about the second half of the season, especially with the trade deadline and stuff like that. But I'll get into a second. I'm going to finish this seltzer. I'm going to pound it, and then I'm going to open up that succulent sipper, which is Cactus Cooler inspired. So if any Cactus Cooler fans out there, definitely go to Anaheim or go to go to Brewery X in Anaheim and pound a few of those. They're good. Here we go. Down the hatch. Excuse me. All right, where's the sipper at? There we go. Succulent sipper. Let's see what this one comes in at. Honestly, it's fairly low too. I don't think it's a very high ABV. Where is it? Let's see here. Where the heck am I just missing it? I'm telling you, I'm losing it today. It's been one of those days. Succulent, where is that's 5% as well. It's pretty cool, and even when you look at the can artwork, it totally looks like a Cactus Cooler. Let's crack her open, eh? All right, all right, all right, all right. And it's orange as all hell, which is good. Oh yeah, let's get it. Set that down here. Okay. That's so good. Excuse me. My apologies for the belch. Yeah, can't really beat this. I mean, it's a big fat 10 for me, especially. It's super refreshing, and super like fruity and stuff like that too. You get all the notes, and it tastes just like a Cactus Cooler, and it gives you a buzz. So, I mean, what more can you ask for? And if you're not a Cactus Cooler fan, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. But yeah, it's getting into what was the trade deadline. There we go. Almost lost it there for a second. I mean, obviously the big fish is Otani. And honestly, I feel like it could be like a 3 or 4 horse race when it comes to getting him. But that's kind of the big question, though. Is like, are the Angels going to trade him? And if they don't, are they going to be able to re-sign him? For that matter, like that's going to be the big question. So, I mean, I feel like they have to either trade him or just either trade him before the deadline or re-sign him. Something they got to do something, because if they don't trade him and you don't get at least 6 prospects for him and you just let him walk away, like that like Artie Moreno will just look so bad in this whole way this whole thing was handled. So like I said, if they know they don't have a chance to sign him, and he just wants to go to the playoffs, he wants to go, play playoff baseball. And that's understandable. I mean, sometimes you want to stick with a team, but I mean, look at Trout. He's been in the league for 11 years or 12 years or whatever, and he's been to the playoffs once. I think he's definitely gotta go if they don't make it this year. But if you're the Angels, just be smart and trade him. Like if it's that bad, because I'm not sure what they are in the wild card right now. And I'll always have a soft spot for the Angels, but I mean, you got to do something. You can't just let them walk away. So the wild card, yeah, the Angels are 5 games out of the wild card right now, and the teams in front of them, obviously, Baltimore's leading the wild card, Houston and Toronto. But then you got New York, Boston, Seattle, and then potentially with Cleveland and Minnesota, because there's the tie for the division. And then then it's the Angels. I mean, they're 1-9 in their last 10, so things are looking a little bleak. I think they got to do something. I think they got to make a move, do something better for the franchise. I mean, you hope you can retain him, and maybe the Angels trade for a couple of veterans at the deadline to try to at least show Otani, hey, we're trying to improve. But I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Wish him the best, but we shall see. But all right, I'm going to shut up now, and we're going to jump into the interview. I will put the timestamp in the description. I'm going to then make sure you stay tuned for the outro. And I hope everybody has a great week, and you will hear from me in just, after the interview. I want to say it's about an hour long. So, like I said, I'll put the timestamp in there. Here we go. Enjoy the interview. All right, guys, welcome back to the Tap Room. I am your host, Mike, or Mikey, whichever you want to call me. But I have a very special guest on today. For everybody listening knows I'm a huge Braves fan. So being able to have this guest on, Grant McAuley, is a Braves writer and also has the From the Diamond podcast on all podcast platforms. How are you, Grant?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're doing well. I'm really psyched about it because I've been bragging to my buddies all week that I get to talk to you, because a lot of them are Dodger fans or different fans of different teams. But I've been following your stuff for a long time. So it's like anything that you or Buster Olney say, I kind of take as, as gospel. So I appreciate you being on the show. We always do, we always start the show. I usually crack a beer open. And this one I have today, is actually from your neck of the woods. From Sweetwater Brewing Company. It's their 420 extra pale ale. I got a few of these to drink today, even though it's a little early for me, but
okay.
Never too early for a beer.
There it is.
Yeah. But I did want to ask you, because I've been following your, like anytime you write anything like that, or anytime I see, anything you post, I'm always checking it out. How long have you been writing for the Braves?
Gosh, well, I started with Braves Radio in 2005, and I was working really
Okay.
behind the scenes, producing, and then there was not as much web content you might imagine about
Yeah.
20 years ago. So it was just trying to carve out like a little corner of the internet. It was kind of my joke, just something where, hey, I've got thoughts about the Braves, I've got some access to the team. Let
Hmm.
me see what I can put together. I mean, my goal has always been to be in broadcasting, doing radio, television, play by play is the big goal. I've done some of that in the minor leagues and gotten to work in conjunction with a lot of broadcasts, doing pre and post for Braves Radio Network, those kinds of things. But yeah, it's been a long road, but a fun road. And it's one that's
Yeah.
taught me a lot about myself, a lot about things that I'm passionate about, a lot about things that I'm good at. When you apply yourself, obviously, that certainly helps. But yeah, I've just been at it for quite a while. And it's just kind of led me to a lot of opportunities that I couldn't have foreseen when I first stepped into the radio world as somebody who was just supposed to come out, work promotions, put up a tent, register people to win prizes, and hand out T-shirts for a radio station way back 18 years ago.
Wow, that's awesome. And 2005, that was. I remember those teams. Was that like the Russ Ortiz and like
It was
Vinny
right after
Castilla?
that. This was the Jeff Francoeur rookie year, Brian
Oh,
McCann,
Frenchie, yeah,
baby Braves year. Yeah, that was the last one of the 14 consecutive division titles. So it was kind of a
yeah.
cool note to come in on because,
Hmm.
for growing up being a Braves fan, obviously the winning the division every year, going to the World Series 5 times, all those things.
Yeah.
The Braves won. That's what they did every
Hmm.
year. You just kind of expected it. Well, 2006 to 2008, 9 kind of
Yeah.
reminded you that, hey, this is not a given. And so
Hmm.
it's kind of fun to kind of learn along the ways. I got to see the organization get rebuilt a couple of different times
Yeah.
and develop a lot of networking and opportunities to learn from some of the people I grew up listening to. Skip Carey, Pete Van Wieren,
Hmm.
Don Sutton, all working there. Joe Simpson in the radio and television side. Chip Carey was incredibly gracious with his time for me. And all of those
Yeah.
guys really helped me out and kind of learning the business. Mark Lemke was doing the pre and post game at that time. I've developed a really great friendship with him. And that's pretty cool because when I was a 10, 11-year-old kid watching the
Yeah.
1991 World Series, this guy was hitting 417 and knocking triples all over the ballpark. And all of a sudden, I got to
Yeah.
go to work and, call him a coworker. So it was a pretty neat experience at that time. And for a kid that was 24, 25 years old, like I was then, just trying to figure out how the business worked, I don't know that I
Hmm.
could have been put in a better position to just watch and learn, if nothing else.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, and I remember like those teams vividly because I became a Braves fan. Everybody always asked me, like, you're from California, you're from the
Mhm.
LA area. How'd you become a Braves fan? It's like, first game I ever went to was a Braves Dodger game. And I saw Chipper hit a home run. And it was like, all right, well, done after that. So always been my favorite player. But like, even during those days with like, yeah, with Chip or Mad Dog or,
Mhm.
Tommy or John. Well, those two names shouldn't go together, Tommy or John, but for any of
Hopefully
the
not.
Braves, yeah.
Never more than once in a career.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, those guys is just when you think of like the game being a beautiful the way like because it is a beautiful like baseball is just such a beautiful game when it's played right when defensively and you're hitting and just pitching too.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, when you think about those guys that they had, well, with those three pitchers specifically, because they were all so good. I mean, Smoltz was the fire thrower and stuff like that. Maddox was just pinpoint precision. I think
Mhm.
Glavine was kind of a little bit closer to to Maddox,
Yeah.
but being able to see those guys all together at one time, it was just like, man, it was like magic.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And for those who are obviously listening and not able to watch what we're doing, I've got my uh,
Yeah,
Glavin, Maddox, Smoltz, and Avery.
that's right.
Remember
Yeah,
the early
Stevie.
1990s? The Avery
Yep.
train was a pretty good one, and
Oh yeah.
unfortunately, it got derailed by injury in the mid 90s. But it was a special time, and each one of those guys was so different. And when you got to the postseason, I know a lot of people look at him like, well, the Braves, they didn't win these World Series, and Maddox wasn't very good in the postseason. Glavin wasn't very good. I would invite you to go look at those numbers.
Yeah.
John Smoltz, though, is one of the greatest postseason pitchers ever. So that
Yeah.
certainly helped out the Braves' cause. But Steve Avery, man, and those 91 and 92 NLCSs against those Pirates teams that were loaded,
Hmm.
the Barry Bonds and the Andy Van Slykes and Bobby Bonillas. I mean, it was a pretty star-studded club that they had trying
Yeah.
to get to the World Series. They couldn't get past the Reds in 1990. They couldn't get past the Braves in 91 and 92. And then Pittsburgh baseball, after
Yeah.
Sid slid, has been a pretty tough ride for those guys for quite a while. But yeah, there's a lot of players that, and especially as an impressionable youth, where you grow up and Braves baseball is on in the background, but it was never built
Hmm.
on winning. I mean, we had
Yeah.
Murphy, and let me tell you, Dale Murphy's at the on my Braves Mount Rushmore at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
The Braves just didn't have much else, and they were able to
Hmm.
come out of that and it'd go on a run where they really just reinvented Braves baseball for not only the Atlanta area or the Southeast region, but this was
Yeah.
a nationwide, coast to coast, yourself included, that
Yeah.
you could watch on TBS every night. A club that fans show up in visiting ballparks in droves still
Yep.
to see this team because of that America's team moniker that they built during the TBS years under Ted Turner. So yeah, the Braves influence, I'll call it, is just so far reaching. It's a really cool fan
Yeah.
base, and I think a unique fan base that nobody else really does it quite like the Braves do it.
Yeah, and I feel exactly the same way because even anytime I go to a game, like whether it's with my buddies, like we were just out, like in kind of when the Braves started the run, or like this last run, like this crazy run they've been on this past like month and a few days,
Yeah.
was when the weekend Eddie hit that grand slam,
Hmm.
to in the bottom of the top of the ninth in Arizona. Went to the Friday game, and I thought Darno had hit that one or hit that home run to to
Yeah.
take the lead, but um, got snagged off the wall. But that was kind of like I feel like they started the run now, and I feel like it's just crazy what they're doing. Like it's like I can't believe how many home runs they're hitting.
Mhm.
I can't believe that they're just out slugging everybody. And I got just so sucked into the Braves and I lost my train of thought. So my apologies. But yeah, but growing up watching it on TBS was doing that and being able to go to those games and be able to see like whether it's Petco Park out here or whether it's Dodger Stadium. And next year when they actually come out and play the Angels, because I love to go there, but being able to see Chipper in his last in his retirement year was the last time that they came out to Anaheim.
Thinking about the Angels, I'll tell you one series you definitely forgot was one in 2017 when Bartolo Colon was still pitching for the Braves. I think that might
Oh
have been
yeah.
his last starts for Atlanta, if I remember
Okay.
correctly. But I think they got swept out there, so you didn't miss much other than the
Okay.
opportunity to watch Mike Trout play. But other than that,
Yeah.
I don't think that was much to write home about. But it's very seldom until the Angels came back out here
Hmm.
last year. Was it last year or earlier this year? Either way, recently. Yeah, I think it was last year. Mike Trout and company had not played in Atlanta since 2014, and they
Yeah.
played in 2020. But obviously, we know the schedule got cut down to 60 games, and they kept it
Hmm.
regional for that shortened season. But yeah, it's very uncommon to be able to see the Braves and Angels go. But this new schedule we're getting for MLB is going to allow more opportunity
Yeah.
to see all 30 teams every other year in your home ballpark or their home ballpark, whatever the case is.
Yeah, that's exciting for me because then I can see him a few times a year. I can see him in Anaheim, I can see him in San Diego, and I can see him out in LA.
Very cool.
So that'll be a ton of fun for me. I did want to ask though, because it was such a magical season. I felt like in 2021 with the World Series, like what that whole run was like. Because obviously the beginning of the season, Ronnie going down and everything like that. I know there was like in the summer when he went down, but it just felt like they were struggling, and then finally they just went nuclear and went white hot on that run from August to the end of September. And after all the trades with like for Soler and Jock Peterson,
Yep.
like what was it like? What was the feeling like in Atlanta or in Truist for that matter? Like when things started to get rolling?
Yeah, as things started to get rolling, you just started to feel like maybe there is still a chance that this team's going to get to October because the Mets kind of gave the division away in part,
Hmm.
but the Braves had
Hmm.
to do the winning to get there. And the
Oh yeah.
Phillies gave them a little late charge, but it just didn't really feel like there was another club in the NL East that was going to be able to keep the Braves out by the time they got into mid to late September. It pretty much felt like, okay, they're going to get back. How far are they going to be able to go, though, was going to really be the question. And it got tested more and more and more as we went into October. But they kind of flashed back to the day that Ronald Acuna Jr. got hurt down in Miami right before the All-Star game in
Yeah.
2019. There were so many people, and I got a lot of interactions on Twitter that told me as soon as he went down, all right, that's it, time to trade off pieces. Let's send Darno and Charlie Morton out of town and see what prospects we can
Mhm.
get for him. I mean, people wanted to, in part, not everybody, just kind of tear it down. But the Braves, they went out and made that Jock Peterson trade. And I
Mhm.
thought that was the first thing that said, okay, well, they're going to at least try here. But
Yeah.
are they going to be able to play enough and keep it close enough that they get to the trade deadline and feel like, okay, let's do some more buying? And credit Alex Anthopoulos and his staff for going out and finding the exact right pieces to fit. I mean, they knew Adam Duvall. That wasn't really a stretch. It was good to get him back. He led the National
Yeah.
League in RBI that year. Gave
Mhm.
the Braves a little bit of defensive component that they were kind of lacking in the outfield because they had to remake the whole outfield. Because keeping in
Yeah.
mind, on opening day, it was Marcelo Zuna in left, Christian Pache in center, and Ronald
Yeah.
Jr. in right. And
Yeah.
all of those guys were gone for various reasons at that time. So
Mm.
you had Soler, who came in. I think he was starting to find something in Kansas City. That's what the scouting department told Alex. So he went out, made the trade, got Soler in, had already had Jock. He brought in Stephen Vogt, catcher, a longtime
Yeah.
veteran catcher who has been a good friend of mine actually for a long time. I met Stephen in the minor leagues in 2009.
Oh,
And he's the kind of character guy that you wanted to bring into a clubhouse that keeps it loose and, really allows the team to just play, I think, comfortably. And that's something I think the Braves do really, really well, not to get off on a huge tangent, but in a
oh, you're
season
fine.
like 2021, where they got tested and so much adversity was thrown at them, and really everybody was thinking, well, maybe that's it. Maybe we just don't have it this year. Maybe we need to start looking ahead to next year. They did not do that. And
Yeah.
getting some reinforcements to walk in, but the strength of that room, the character in that room, whether it was guys like Freddie Freeman or Dansby Swanson or whoever it was, a lot of these Braves really figured out ways to just play through it and keep the opportunity of the day first and foremost and win series. I mean, the Braves still tell you that. I mean, the Braves will go out
Yeah.
and have a huge win, hit 5 homers, and you talk to Brian Snitker after the game, he's like, yeah, that's good. We want to
Yeah.
win the game and we want to win the series.
Yeah.
That's about as much as you're going to get out of him at that point. He's not going to wax poetic about, in my 44 years of baseball, I've never seen a game as exciting as that. No, you can't get too high and you can't get too low about
Yeah.
it. And that may sound cliche, but like this is what works for that club. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean you don't feel in the moment a little bit more of the emotion and exhilaration and excitement. I mean, you can see the excitement these guys play with,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in this last 5 or 6 weeks, if you want a reminder of just how passionate
Yeah.
and how good this club is. But to get on back to 2021, they brought
Yeah.
in the right guys. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you could ever recreate the scenario in which you're able to bring in the exact right guys on a trade and get
Yeah.
everybody you've got going and figure out a way to patchwork a rotation when you ran into trouble in the postseason and win the World Series with what amounted to basically 2 starting pitchers. By that
Yeah.
point, I mean, it had gotten pretty grim on the roster
I
construction
know.
standpoint from the pitching staff. So it was pretty incredible to see all of that. But the feeling in Truist Park was this slow build. And by the time you got into the postseason and they beat the Brewers, you're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
wow, they're going to advance. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
you know that you've got to get through the Dodgers as well. And they
Yeah.
got through the Dodgers. And that moment, being at those games when Tyler Matzik was punching out the side in
That
game
was
6,
yeah.
I mean, I still
Crazy.
get goosebumps
I just did too. Yeah.
thinking about it because that's the loudest I have ever heard Truist Park. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there were other moments in that postseason that approached that level, but maybe it was just the long-standing, Braves fan in me from my very, very, youngest. Those are the kind of moments that don't come around very often, and when you get to live one of them, it's a pretty special thing. And the Braves lived a lot of
Mm-hmm.
those moments in 2021. So
Yeah.
going out beating that Houston Astros team and the Jorge Soler home run. I remember sitting on my couch
Yeah.
into my now fiance and saying, wow, I think the Braves are going to win the World Series. Now, keeping in mind, I
Yeah.
said that about 48 hours before when Adam Duvall hit that grand slam in Game 5. But
Yeah.
no, I really think they're going to do it because this is in Houston, and this
Mm-hmm.
is, a message sender from Jorge Soler, and they had
Yeah.
Max Fried on the mound, and it just felt a little bit different, and they got it done. And again,
Yeah.
it was a special run, not to just go on and on and on about.
Oh no,
We all know how
I
great it is, but
oh yeah, no, you could talk to me about that for days and
and it's the
hours
whole
and
point,
weeks.
right? And that's
Yeah.
what they say is the flags fly forever. And the Braves have flown a few flags, but not as many of those World Series ones as they want. So for the first
Yeah.
one since 1995, I think that gave everybody the moment, the culmination of all the waiting
Mm-hmm.
that had been done for such a long time. But also, I think
Yeah.
it's a reminder that, hey, this club could do this again because that's how good they are and that's how well they're
Mm-hmm.
built. And I think we're feeling that in 2023.
Definitely. I mean, and going back, yeah, like when you're talking about 2021, because my brother, I had kind of converted him into a Braves fan, like over like back in like 2019, 2020, because it wasn't a big sports. He liked Alabama football, but that was about it. So I got him to jump on the Braves bandwagon with me, just to let him, so tell him like if you need a team, you could cheer for the Braves. But he was watching. I was like, one day they're gonna make you proud. Like I was like, there's gonna be times where like it felt like every year the Braves had before 2021 it would be like they lose the first game of the division series and then win the next one and then lose, but then eventually end up losing. So I was like, there's going to be a lot of heartbreak, but there's going to be a day where they're like, everything kind of comes together. Because I remember, I was 8 years old when they won the 95. I mean, it was at 1-0 when Game 6 when Justice hit that dinger.
Yep.
But I remember telling him, I was like, one day they'll make you proud. And then when I think it really set in for me when Dansby hit that 2-run bomb to
Mhm.
left, and it was 5-0. I was like, okay. I was like, all right, well, they're still like, I don't know how many innings there were left. And then Freddie came up and put that one in the center. I legit cried a little bit. I was like, was watching it with my cousin, who's a lifelong Astros fan, who I feel bad for because he's just like, man, I just wanted my team to win. I didn't
Yeah,
expect it to happen the way it did, but
they got one, and we don't have to talk about
yeah,
it. They got one.
yeah. So like, but when him and I were sitting there, I was just like, man, I couldn't hold it in. I was just like, my eyes started welling up, and I was just like, man, it finally happened. And my brother sent me a message because my cousin, who I went to the game with out in Arizona, him and I were texting each other. And my brother was just like, hey, congrats to you guys for being fans all these years. He's like, I've only been a fan for the last few, but it was just, being able to have that finally. It was just like after all these years, it was like, it was nice.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of people, and especially growing up like I did in the '80s, like my introduction to baseball was from primarily my grandfather, and
Mm-hmm.
he was around for 1995. He's been gone for quite a while now, and so when
Yeah.
I won it again in 2021, it just kind of brought back like this rush, this like whole well of emotions of wow, when they do win it, because, he was just like anybody else, fans who like, you love the winning, the losing is so difficult, you have to cope with it and deal with it because it comes with a
Yeah.
game. But, he was living and dying on every pitch of Braves baseball. And that's kind of how I came up. So to see him win
Mm-hmm.
it, I had this shirt, this 1995 World Series champion shirt that I got for Christmas of 1995 from my grandparents that year that I don't think I ever wore when I got it. And it was just kind of put into one of those boxes of, okay, here's some stuff for memories for later.
Mm-hmm.
And when they won that World Series, I went and got it out of that box. And it was too large at the time, because I was 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And now being able to pull it out of that box and put it on, I wore it for the first time after the Braves won the World Series that year. And that was a pretty cool feeling because it was like having my grandfather with me
Mm-hmm.
for winning the World Series again. And those are the
Yeah.
kind of things. And that's, again, you go back to how beautiful baseball is, not just on the field, but
Mm-hmm.
what it gives us, I think, off the field, the connections, the nostalgia, all the things that the emotions that are tied up in it. If you love baseball, there's more than one reason. It's about more than hits and home runs and strikeouts and double plays. It's an emotional connection. And that is definitely what I felt after they won the World Series in 2021.
Yeah, definitely. It was. I remember being up so late. I know that night that they won it, and just rewatching the
Yeah.
clips. I was like, I couldn't believe. I just told myself, I was like, all right, I need to stop. Well, I need to turn it off and stop. Go to bed because I had to work the next day. But yeah, it was just such a special moment, and being able to finally just say like, yes. I mean, like
Most
it happened again.
Yep.
Um, I did want to ask you too, because I'm obviously Truist. I have, I've been a Braves fan my entire life, but I've always wanted to. The plan is to try to make it out to Atlanta either in September or maybe sometime early next year.
Mhm.
Hopefully, if it's next year, we're celebrating another World Series.
There you go.
I wanted to ask because I know like what's the kind of craft beer like? Do they have like because I know they have the Coors Light Chop House at Truist. Do they sell a lot of a lot of craft beer in Truist Park as well?
Yeah, they have quite a bit of it, and obviously I'm there working, so I don't get an opportunity to
Yeah,
sample too many of the brews that are going on there. But I feel
yeah.
like they've done a nice job of like supplementing that as it goes along. My expertise is clearly what happens on the field, and not as
Mhm.
much of the fan experience type of. But they have that Terrapin tap room that's there as well. There's
Oh,
always
nice.
a good joke on the broadcast about Jeff Francoeur has his Frenchie's Blues brew
Yeah.
enough, so. That I know is one that always kind of comes up, and I think people hear about it on the TV broadcast. They come down to the ballpark and try it, but it seems like they have a lot of offerings. I mean, from a fan perspective,
Yeah.
whether it be whatever you're looking to imbibe or whatever you're looking to eat, this is a totally different animal than the previous homes of the Braves were. I mean, this is one
Mhm.
built on. Come in, stay a while. When you're done, head on out to the Battery and enjoy a little bit more. Hopefully, responsibly. Jump in your ride share and go home if you need to do that. But yeah, it's a pretty cool dynamic overall. If you're looking for a fan experience that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to remember, that you're going to want to do again and again, I
Yeah.
think Truist Park's got something pretty special going on.
That's awesome. And yeah, and with the Battery, the way you see everything because I mean I always get to see it on TV because I have the MLB at bat, so like I can watch all the Braves games on there. But I do miss the TBS days where I could walk home and it'd be like it would be 4 o'clock every start,
Yeah,
for me out here.
there you go. Well,
So
hey, speaking of beer, I
yeah,
don't have one to crack open because we are
that's okay.
recording a little bit early, but I do have one beer that I have right here in my home studio.
Awesome.
So This is the remnants of a Coors Light can, and you might be wondering, why in the world would I have a crushed Coors Light can? Uh,
Yeah.
that beer was poured on me and another friend of mine by Nick Markakis in 2019 when the
Oh,
Braves won
cakes.
the division because he said we looked a little too dry. So
Yeah.
they were enjoying celebrating winning the division, and it's a cool thing because you're a fly on the wall. It's not your
Hmm.
celebration; it's the team celebration, but it's
Yeah.
a culmination of
Of
the first
course.
step on what you hope is going to be a larger journey. But these guys, they know how to celebrate. They know how to throw a few back, and they were certainly doing it that night. So to be included by the old wily veteran Nick Markakis,
Hmm.
didn't say a lot. Usually, he kind of had that stoic look and did all his talking on the field, but
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to be included there. So I kept that Coors Light can as kind of a little memento of the 2019 Division Series celebration. And I
Hmm.
always like to pick up a cork from one of the champagne bottles and
That's
just put it
awesome.
in the collection as well. So little stuff that you can get that nobody's going to mind that you're walking out of there with.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, and not to, I don't, sorry for the listeners if I keep going back to 2021, but when, in this post game celebration, when Snit said this one's for Bobby,
Yeah.
I lost it. I lost it again. I was like, I couldn't do it. Cause I mean, like Bobby Cox and like, I had a Bobby Cox jersey and for the life of me, when I moved years ago, when I was like 22, I lost it. But I always wanted to get another one, but I always wanted also a Leo Mazzoni jersey because my grandpa would always laugh at me because my grandpa was a Dodger fan, but he would laugh. He'd be like, "That guy just bops back and forth in the dugout," and it's Leo Mazzoni. It was so funny though. But I loved Leo Mazzoni. He was such a great pitching coach.
Yeah, and that was a great year. That conversation that Snit had, obviously, with that club and dedicating
Yeah.
that series and that season. I mean, it was Bobby Cox, it was Hank Aaron, it was Phil Necro, Don Sutton. I mean, there was a
Hmm.
lot of, I think, the extra emotional weight that went with that season. Bill Bartholomew, who was instrumental in
Hmm.
getting the Braves to Atlanta. I mean, there were some big luminaries in Braves franchise history that were lost over the course of that year, or prior to the year starting. So it was a pretty special season overall from just about every standpoint you look at it. It does
Yeah.
much more special than winning the World Series after all of that.
Oh, definitely. Um, I did want to ask you too, because I know like there are a few people I've reached out to out in the Atlanta area, just because I always like to ask, like where like what the craft if there's like a lot of craft breweries in because I know was it well it's in Cobb County, but are there a lot of craft breweries around there, or do they have stuff like in the Battery or?
I think that not so much in the Battery, other than the Terrapin tap
Oh,
room there, but
gotcha.
Atlanta has a huge, craft beer. They have a lot of different options, and it's not just limited to the Atlanta area. It's also, when you think about the Athens, there's just
Hmm.
a lot of different options around there. So if you're looking for different things, you're going to be able to find it in and around the Atlanta metro area. But it's not all
Awesome.
necessarily like focused right there in the Battery and the adjacent area.
Gotcha. And you know what? I did want to because there's a few. I know like Sweetwater is like one of the big ones, right? Is that
Yeah.
like because I think that's the only one from Georgia that I'm really able to find out here. Like I can actually go to Total Wine out here. Do you guys have Total Wines over there?
Yes. Yeah, we do.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure because
Total
I know
Wine
there's.
anymore, I believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's always like some certain ones that, like you can find in certain places and certain ones you can't. But that's brewed independently since 1997.
Yeah, so I would say Sweetwater, Monday Night Brewing Company is another good one. If you just kind of making a list for that, I thought New Realm Brewing Company is a pretty fun one.
Okay.
And there's just a whole bunch more. You can make a pretty big list of.
I bet.
I'm scrolling through a list I'm looking at right now just to think of the ones I've been to. Scofflaw is another big one.
Nice.
You can make a whole, I think, vacation out of it and just kind of pick a different one every day and get
Yeah.
a full week's worth of fun in. You might have a week's worth of hangovers to go with it.
Yeah.
It would be an awful lot of fun, but you can kind of start at Sweetwater if you want to, because it's kind of the
Okay.
biggest, most centralized Atlanta one, I think. I mean, I haven't been to a bigger one. There've been a
Mm.
lot of radio events that have been hosted out there over the years that I've had the opportunity to go to, and I think a lot of fun can be had there.
That's awesome, man. Because I mean, I always just kind of feel like beer and baseball just go together. I mean, like one of the things I always get anytime I go to a game is I'll get a beer, I'll get a Cracker Jack, and then a hot dog with nacho cheese is
There
what
you
I go to.
go. There you go. That's a pretty good combo. Unfortunately, they do not serve that in the press box.
Oh yeah. I mean, that would be like, what's it like being in the press box too? Because every time I think of the press box, I mean, I kind of think of, I mean, and remember the movie Rookie of the Year when
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is it Rookie of the Year when he goes, "Oh, it's Hito," and it's John Candy.
Yeah, yeah, John Candy doing the call, or Bob Uecker playing Harry Doyle and Major.
Oh, so good.
It's a little less dramatic
Mm.
than that. I mean, it's really a workstation where
Yeah, of
a lot of
course.
people writing articles, clearly covering the game, following the game,
Yeah.
doing the research as you go along. I mean, if you follow along with me on Twitter, typically
Mm.
I'm looking for certain things and events to happen, and then trying to figure out, statistically, is there something of note there, so I can put it out on my
Hmm.
Twitter feed, and that's a lot of what I do. And then obviously
Yeah.
all the different writers and radio type people. Television's doing its broadcast, so they've clearly got their whole thing going on. Same for the radio networks and whatnot. But it's a pretty well oiled machine. I think
Yeah.
the camaraderie and a fun that can happen up there. But there's also a lot of work that has to get done
Oh, I
during the
bet.
game. So there's not a lot of cheering, not a lot of noise, not a lot of loud conversations. But it
Yeah.
might be the antithesis of the fan experience, because you're kind of up there to be there to work and to get some things done. And then
Yeah.
obviously, you talk to the players before and after the game and get all the material that you need to go along with that day's game. But it's a ton of fun. And I've told people for years and years, it's really cool to be able to call a ballpark the office. And I've been able to do it
Yeah.
for a while, and I hope to do it for a while longer.
That's awesome, man. And congratulations just on being able to do something like that,
Thanks.
because I mean, that's just sounds like the dream. Like, I'm trying to think of another word to to use for something like that, but it really feels like it's just that would be, like you get to call you said, like you said, the
Yeah.
ballpark, the office, and you get to talk to the players, you get to watch the game. And I know there's obviously a ton more that goes into it, like you were saying, like, you're constantly having to look up different things, or like maybe think something that's relevant to that specific at bat,
Mhm.
or what a guy's doing at that moment. But that's, congratulations, man. Like I said, I take what you and Buster say, because I know Buster, he may not say he's a Braves fan, but I think he's a closet Braves fan.
I feel like a lot of people feel like that just based on some of the coverage that he's done over the years. I've had a
Yeah.
chance to talk to him a couple of times. And
Yeah.
it's always fun to do that. But yeah, it's not just the work part of it, the
Hmm.
aspect of, what you do day in and day out. I mean, it's important, obviously, but I think it's all the things that it took to get there, all the moments in your life that kind of lit the fuse or lit the fire for that dream. And you can't really, I feel like, lose sight of it, because if you're coming to the ballpark and just not having a good time at a baseball
Yeah.
game, maybe find something else to do, because I mean it is fun.
Hmm.
It's
Oh,
work,
yeah.
but it is fun, and I've had an incredible opportunity to see my dream take a lot of different shapes and turns, and go in different directions than I would have thought that it would have. But every one of them, I feel like, has led me to an opportunity that was out there for me. I just had to put in the work and find it, and it's a lot
Exactly.
of fun to get out there and do that, and to live that dream. You can never lose that perspective. I feel like if you do, you start to get cynical, and then again, you can go back to what I said before. If you're not having fun at a ballpark, maybe it's time to go do something else.
Exactly. And that's one of the things too, like because I love, like, obviously, like, talking about, craft beer, and I love, but I also love, like, I can talk sport, like, especially with the teams that I love, like, the Braves being probably the closest to my heart. And USC football, just because I grew up, like, walking across the in
Sure.
LA with my dad. But the Braves are, like, right there for me, and it just being able to sit down and have a conversation, and that's what I feel like this show has always been for me. It's been like therapy, like, because you can go into, like, there's different fans of different teams everywhere, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, you could walk into a craft, a craft brewery, or just a bar in general, and be able to, like, sit across from someone and be like, "Hey, you're wearing a Phillies hat. I'm wearing a Braves hat. Like, have that hat. How did we end up here?"
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why you can kind of, like, find out more about each other, just have an honest conversation about, whether it's life or sports, or, oh, do you like this kind of beer? Or do you like that kind
Mhm.
of beer, or anything?
Yeah, I
And
always feel like talking about
yeah,
baseball is for people. Baseball is a sport for people who like talking about life, because baseball happens every day. A
yep,
lot of other sports,
mm-hmm,
it's a handful of times a week, once a week.
yep,
And
yep,
obviously there's reasons for that based on the physicality of some other sports. And I
mm-hmm,
don't want all my sports to be the same either. I like them because they're different. I like different things about them. You can get the same
exactly,
feelings from each sport, but and it's been pretty crazy the last couple of years. In 2021, the Braves won the World Series. Georgia won the national title.
yeah,
And they won it again last year. I mean, that I'd waited from the year I was born was the last time they won one, all the way
mm-hmm,
to 2021 to get a second one. So it was within a
yeah,
span of like 3 or 4 months. The two teams that I've grown up on both
yeah.
won the biggest games that they could win. So that was a pretty
That's
cool
awesome.
a series of events there. But yeah, baseball is like talking about life because it's happening every day. If
Mm-hmm.
you enjoy having those conversations, there's no shortage of them in baseball. I just feel like it's the most fun because, hey, I like having a new game every day. If I didn't
Oh,
like that one
exactly.
yesterday, I get a new
Yeah.
one tonight. Now, it may not go well either, but there's a game tomorrow every day until there's not, is basically how I feel the 162 works.
Oh, exactly. And kind of like I'm the same way with like when it comes to like, at least there's, they're playing tomorrow, but I mean the way they've been winning, it's just been
Unreal.
crazy. I mean the only thing I can really kind of like equate it to was that year that was like it was like Chef, when they had was it Javi Lopez too? It was like
Mhm.
Chef, Chipper, Andrew.
Yep.
Was that three?
Yeah, 2003. That's
Mm,
the only offense that I can think of that holds a
yeah.
candle to what they're doing this year. And this Braves club has a chance to break that run scored record.
It was great.
Clearly, they've got a chance to set the club's wins record, which was the 1998 team.
Mhm.
I mean, there's just so many things this Braves club is doing, setting a single season home run record for all of baseball. They're on pace to do that. They just
Yeah.
matched the Twins for most home runs before the All-Star break. That 2019 Twins team set the record
Hmm.
with 307 total homers.
Yeah.
Braves have 3 more games before the All-Star break, so you do some simple math. They're
Yeah.
on pace for about 310, 315 home runs,
Yeah.
110 wins, 900 plus runs scored. I mean, this is a club that would appear to me is really putting it all together and could be going places.
Yeah. And what's crazy is, I mean, Kyle Wright was a 20-game winner last
Mm-hmm.
year, not in there.
Yep.
Max Fried, runner up to the Cy Young,
Mm-hmm.
not there.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my buddy about it, my best friend Ivan. I was talking, he's an Astros fan as well. So I mean, I don't know how I got surrounded by so many Astros fans, but I did. So I was talking to him about it on the 4th. I said, I just don't want to do anything that worries me. And I'm not trying to put that out there in the universe, but the only thing that worries me is just because, growing up in the 90s, having, the 98 Braves. I just don't want to have the best record in baseball and be like other teams and get bounced. But I mean, if they're only going to get better, I just want them to. I feel like the bye week kind of always hurts too. I mean, I know last year was kind of different
It
because
kind
of
of hurt everybody because it was more
yeah,
time than usual last year, and it seemed like everybody
yeah,
had to buy. It wasn't necessarily a net positive, but you
yeah,
at the time, if you were the Braves last year, you had to have it because Max Fried was ill. Spencer
yeah,
Strider needed more time to even have a chance to pitch against the Phillies, and clearly that didn't go well. But
yeah,
I mean, those were the things I felt like that undid the Braves last year was a sick Max Fried
for
and an
sure.
injured Spencer Strider were two things that really took the wind out of the sails of
Hmm.
that pitching staff. Charlie Morton got knocked out of that game in Philly, taking a liner off the arm. That didn't help.
Yeah,
It was just some of those things conspire. But I'll say this, as somebody who grew up during the 80s, where the
yeah,
club, I mean, other than a handful of years when I was too young to remember, the club wasn't expected to go anywhere. They're going to be closer to 100 losses than 100 wins.
yeah,
It's nice to
true.
get there. I'm not
Oh,
saying
for
rest
sure.
on that if you're the organization, and I don't think
Hmm.
they do. I don't think Alex
Yeah.
Anthopoulos is resting on anything, but this is a team that has that opportunity every year. And if you're a
Oh
fan
yeah.
of a particular fan base or whatnot, you just want to know that your club has that chance. And the Braves
Oh,
are
definitely.
definitely walking in spring training with a chance to have a special season. But like you said, you want to see them win those games so that it actually
Hmm.
comes to fruition. And now we know what it feels like again. I got a good reminder
Yeah.
from 2021. He kind of won another one of those things.
Exactly. Once you have it, you kind of get that itch to get it again.
Yeah, yeah. And that itch is in that clubhouse as well. I mean, all those guys know what the big dream is, what the big goal is. And I think that's why, as they go through the course of the season, and like we can get excited about, you win 16 out of 17, or last year they won
Hmm.
14 in a row, they swept the Mets. I mean, everything is kind of kept in a certain perspective, and you don't allow yourself to get, too high on the horse until
Yeah.
you actually finish the entire ride. And for the Braves this year, the ride's right out there in front of them, and they do have a chance to be the best club in baseball, which is a pretty nice thing. Not too many teams get to walk into the season and feel like we have a chance if everything goes right to be the best team in baseball. But winning the World Series, I mean, that's the crown you want to put on at the end.
Exactly. Because I mean, if especially the last couple of years, I felt like the Braves started a little slow. Like
Mm-hmm.
last year, like you were going back to what you were saying, but when Maxie went down and Strider and all that sort of stuff, and Charlie getting hurt, it just felt like they were battling so hard for so long that it eventually just took its toll. I
And
mean,
93 was that way too. I've talked to a
yeah,
lot of Braves that were on that team where the Giants won 103 games that year. The Braves won 104. They got Fred McGriff at the trade deadline, and I think they
hmm,
went 54 and 17 down the stretch. I mean, it was just an insane run that they
yeah,
went on. But all of that energy was expended to get over the top of the Giants. Then they got to the NLCS, and the Phillies were able to dispatch the Braves, and of course went on to lose the World Series to the Blue Jays. But man, I felt like that
Yeah.
'93 team could beat the Blue Jays, and considering that you just lost to the Blue Jays in '92, I was ready for that rematch, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. The one I wanted to talk about too was the 98 Braves. That's what it was. Okay. Thinking of the 98 Braves. I do that a lot on my show. Like it just, things just kind of go here and there. But the 98 Braves, they did a lot of, obviously Morgan Wallen came out with the song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember hearing that song, like my cousin, because, you know, him being a big Braves fan too. He's like, oh, I mean, you got to listen to the song. It just came out. And I forgot that it was coming out that day because I was waiting for it. And I heard it. I was like, man, like it was just like, felt like, I mean, it was such a beautiful song. Like, it's a really good song, but it was like, man, it's a knife to the heart. I mean, it just reminded me of that team. But I was like, I don't want to end up it being 25 years ago. There's like that correlation, obviously, kind of from this team to the 98 Braves team. And I just want them to, like, one thing I loved is going back to 2021. And sorry, I keep going back to it, but it's like what he says, let's kill the narrative, or like, you know.
Yeah, it did. The Atlanta sports narrative, which is, you know, just one of the biggest straw mans that's ever been built.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it was such a big song. Did they ever like play it in the ballpark? I mean, I know it's kind of, you know, a thing, but
I haven't really heard it, to be honest. And sometimes, you know, I try to tune it out because, like, when you do go to the ballpark every day, from a musical perspective, you're getting a lot of the same stuff. So it just kind of blends into the background. And, you know, more times than not, you notice when you're like, oh, why are they playing this song? Then, oh, I really like this song because I'm there for baseball. So, I mean, as long as they're playing something, I guess that's kind of the job in between innings and whatnot. But that year, the 98 year, I know a lot of people, and that song probably stirred it up a little bit, but I was thinking, because somebody said something about, why are you bringing up the 98 team, you know, that this year's Braves team trying to, you know, beat their wins record. And I'm like, well, because it's a statistical fact. And additionally, you know, the entire 98 Braves are now no longer playing, and the 2003 Braves are not tied to them directly other than through the lens of the fan. But that isn't necessarily, one doesn't have an effect on the other. But that year, I know it was disappointing because you have the best record in baseball. You want to go all the way. But you talk to guys that played on those teams. I mean, the one that got away for all those guys in the mid 90s, or the majority of those guys that were there for the multiple World Series runs, was 96.
Yeah.
You go up 2-0 on the Yankees in Yankee Stadium and then come home and don't win another game in that series. I mean, that was a tough one from a fan perspective. And I mean, I was a kid when it happened, but other than 2021, you know, as far as just the overall emotion, the first time I really felt it as an adult, I can't think of a more like baseball experience in the 91 World Series. And I know the Braves lost that series, but I still think, just going back and objectively looking at it, it's one of the greatest World Series of my lifetime. And maybe one of the greatest World Series ever, because it was so many one-run games. Each team won all of their home games. It went the distance to 7. You had Smoltz versus Jack Morris, so on and so forth. Wish the Braves could have won. That was the only thing that was wrong with it. The wrong team won from the perspective. 92, I could deal with. 95, obviously, things went really well. We already talked about 93. 96 hurt, and then 97 losing to the Marlins. I would put all of those ahead of the 98 team, but I do think that the 98 club and the disappointment there, followed up by getting swept in the World Series by the Yankees, I think it started to feel like the seismic shift of the 90s Braves not being able to have climbed to the very, very top of the mountain and planted that flag as many times as they wanted to.
Yeah, and I've always felt like, too, like, even if they would have just won 2 during that 90s run, like, it could have been, like, the narrative would have been different. Because I feel like people still, like, even now, like, I remember, like, in high school when I graduated in 2005, and I remember people telling me, like, oh, you're Braves fan. I was like, oh, what's it like winning all those division championships and not winning a World Series, only winning one? I was like, at least we made it, though. Like, at least we, went to the different, to the different times. Because even I remember, like, in 2001, was it that? No, 2001 was the Diamondbacks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I remember playing against that that Diamondbacks team, but like going against Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling, and having Brian Jordan out there, and Chip, and Andrew, and all those guys. I always just felt like, if the Braves just had a little bit more offense, I always felt like, that's what I always think. Yeah, I was like, if they just had a little bit more, like they could have won like 5 or 6. I felt like, because of how good they were.
They got there 5 times. But one thing I think is interesting, like say they won back to back in 96, and welcome to what if
Yeah.
That's what we have in that one. Say that they did.
Yeah.
The Big Red Machine is looked upon as one of the greatest baseball juggernauts of all time. They
Hmm.
won 2 World Series.
Yeah.
Big Red Machine didn't go through the 70s and win 5 or 6 World Series. I mean,
Yeah.
they won there too. They won them back to back, 75, 76. And, they had stacked with Hall of Famers, much like the 95 Braves club was that won the World Series and the 96
Hmm.
that went right back the year after. I think that the Braves, they get a weird rap with some fans. But again, to do that much winning year over year over year, I think just about any other club would trade the opportunity to win consistently and have a chance to get there over hoping that their shot in the dark once every 5, 7, 10 years comes through. And there's some fan bases that don't even get that. So
Yeah.
I think if you are a Braves fan and have been for a long time, I mean, clearly you kind of get spoiled in some ways with the
You
amount
do.
of winning that they've done. And sometimes I think it's hard to keep it in perspective because I can tell you this game is hard. It is not easy.
Yeah.
And it is not a foregone conclusion that your great regular season team is the hottest for the 2 to 3 weeks in October now that it needs
Yep.
to be to win the World Series. We've just seen the story play out too many times. And unfortunately,
Hmm.
we got to the place where the 2021 Braves were the
Yeah.
hot team at the right time and won it all.
Yeah. And there's like baseball, it's like there's just ebbs and flows, like you're saying.
Yep.
Like it's up, it's down. Like you don't know who's gonna get hot at the end. I mean, as long as for me, like I mean, as much as I would always want the Braves to win, one thing I will always say is as long as it's not the Mets, I'm okay. I
A
just
lot of
can't.
people feel that way.
Yeah. As long as it's not the Mets. Even last year with the Phillies, like my buddy being an Astros fan, I was glad his team won because they, kind of, I guess, got their justification after the
Yeah,
fact.
sure.
But I was like, oh, if the Phillies win, I'm okay with it. Like I'm okay with the Phillies. I don't hate the Phillies like like I do the Mets. I usually use a colorful word when I when I talk
Oh,
about
I
the
get
Mets.
you. I get you. I get you. There's a
But
lot of people out there. Both those rivalries, I think, are pretty hot for the Braves. There was a
yeah,
little a period of time there for a minute where Braves and Nationals was turning into a little bit of a rivalry. Braves
oh
and
for sure.
Marlins,
Hmm.
maybe we're starting to see some of that this year, but the head-to-head matchup would say that the
Yeah,
Braves still got a pretty decisive advantage. But the Marlins are a better team. I'll tell you
yeah,
this, and even though they got swept away at Truist Park and they've gotten beaten up on this year, if they get hot at the right time, the Marlins have already done that twice. So
yeah,
it was at the Braves' expense in '97. Then they went and beat an
yeah,
Indians team that was also extremely good that year. And I
yeah,
remember how tough that was to watch. But and it's so weird too because in '95 it was the Braves, beating the Indians in the World Series.
yeah,
By '97, they had traded David Justice and Marquise Grissom over there. So once the Braves
yeah,
were knocked out, I was like, well, man, you know what? I hope the Indians win
yeah,
because Marlins and the Levon Hernandez game, and you're just so frustrated. It's like, all right,
yeah,
cool. Well, I hope these other guys, get theirs because obviously Cleveland's been looking for its World Series for a long time, and
yeah,
they haven't gotten it quite yet. In 2016, I might have been the one contrarian that was not pulling for the Cubs to break their streak because I
yeah.
kind of wanted the Cubs streak to hang around because historically it had been around for so long. But once it was said and done, you can't be anything but happy for a fan base that finally gets to get that monkey off its back.
Oh, for sure.
108 years at that time. That's just a crazy, crazy long streak that is just unbelievable. And what 0405 was pretty big for the Red Sox and the White Sox in back
Oh,
to back
yeah,
years. They had long streaks, going without. So now Cleveland, the Guardians, as they are now
hmm
known, they're going to have to figure out a way to get themselves back to the World Series and win it. And I don't know that they quite have the club to get it done this year.
yeah. I feel like the whole the old American League Central, whether it's the Twins or the Guardians, kind of like. I mean, clearly they're in first place, but I mean they're hovering right around 500.
Yeah, it feels like they're set up to get rolled over by somebody out of the American League East or
Yeah,
the Astros again. It feels like a sacrificial lamb. I joke on my show a lot, and I have for the last couple of years. Well, somebody has to win the American League Central, even if nobody wants to,
exactly.
and somebody will.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, they just. I remember like you mentioned like Levon Hernandez. Like, not I haven't heard that name, and I couldn't tell you how long. But he was when his stuff was on, he was just filthy.
Yeah, well, when he got a strike zone that was as wide
Yeah,
as a compact car, he
yeah,
also was able to
that's
do a lot of
that's
things.
very true. That's very true. And with the All-Star game coming up, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, not just so I could, be a fanboy and and talk to you about baseball for a while, but the All-Star game. Braves got 8 guys going in.
Mhm.
Do you like going into the second half? How do you see like that going for the Braves? And like, are there any other teams out there that you really feel like could do some damage. And obviously, we know somebody could get hot at the end, but we'll see. But anybody you think that it could kind of come out of the woodwork or come out of somewhere that maybe we weren't expecting.
Yeah, I mean, there's always those stories, right? And we saw Cincinnati get so hot and take over the National League Central for a minute. The Pirates were a fun story for a couple of months. They've regressed a bit.
Yeah.
They're still tougher than they were last year. I'll give them credit for that. The Marlins, I think, have been much improved. The biggest surprise for me is I never expected there to be 18 or 19 games between the Braves and the Mets in the standings. I've never been more wrong about expecting a rematch of last year and not getting anything close to that, and feeling like that's a team that should be able to play better at some point. The Cardinals have also been terrible, but that was a little bit different feeling than the New York Mets and the highest payroll in baseball history. But so those are a few things that surprised me in the first half, but I do feel like, the Mets, stranger things have happened in a club coming from 8 or 9 back in the wild card to get into the postseason. So there's still that possibility. The Padres also have been a tougher team to deal with, and they're going to have to figure out their stuff if they want to get out of the West, particularly with how well the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks are playing. There's another great surprise.
Yeah,
those are clubs that I would look at in particular as ones to keep an eye on. What the Diamondbacks do at the trade deadline, the Marlins I think could do some buying at the trade deadline, and if they do, what does that make them look like in the second half, and what things do the Braves need to get themselves over the top, if you will, in the second half, or just make themselves that much better? Because it's hard to look at anything, especially the lineup, and say, well, the Braves need to have this or that at the trade deadline if they want to contender. I mean, they're a contender. Could you add to the bullpen? Sure. Could you look at another starter? Maybe, if you need to. But if you can get Max Fried back by the end of the month, Kyle Wright not too far along after that, maybe sometime in August. He's made 10 starts this year, and the Braves are still the best record in baseball after 86 games. So those are kind of the things I'm focused on right now. But as you pointed out, I mean, there's a lot of baseball left to be played. We haven't seen who the second half surges are going to be. And of course, once you get to October and that field is set, who's coming in there really ready, fired up, or just on that ball where the momentum might just be on their side to make some noise in October when you look back at the All-Star break and think, where did these guys come from? I mean, the Phillies did it last year.
Yeah. I mean, they sometimes the teams just, things are going right, things are clicking, things are firing on all cylinders. And I mean, it seems like there's always that team. I mean, I feel like even with that that 2021 Braves team, like I keep going back to it, but like the bullpen got hot and the bats got hot. I mean, they brought in all these guys, at the deadline. So yeah, it happens. I mean, but there are times like only one team that got out of the first round, and was it the Astros last year?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I was going to say it was not something that was a net positive for all those teams with a great record. Dodgers won 111 games and they went home.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Mets and the Braves got knocked out after both winning 101 games. I mean, these were teams that were supposed to be juggernauts and make some noise in the postseason and maybe settle the score in the postseason. And they never saw each other again because that was just the way that things played out. I mean, the Phillies knocking off the Cardinals, I felt like that was the first domino that fell that really changed the way the National League side of things was going to look. Padres also getting past the Mets was another big deal. And clearly the Phillies taking the momentum of that Cardinal series and running right through the Braves all the way to the World Series. It was October always gives us some moments. Sometimes we're going to really love them. Other times we're going to just wonder, how in the world did that happen?
Exactly. And I did want to ask you, because you mentioned earlier that you were covering minor league teams. Was the Stripers? You covered the Stripers?
Yeah, I've covered them some. I've called some games for them over the past few years, done some play-by-play there. But I did a lot with the Tampa Bay Rays from 2009 to 2012. I was calling minor league games in their system, and that was a lot of fun. That's where I got to meet Stephen Vogt.
Awesome.
Kirby Yates I met way down there. I've known him for a long time. Kevin Kiermaier, also still in the big leagues. Alex Cobb. Those are some of the guys that were on the teams that made it to the majors and have had a nice long run of success as well.
That's awesome. But the only reason I was asking about the Stripers, because I mean, I have like so many Braves hats, but I have 2 Stripers hats. So I was like, because I mean, I always try to support like everything. So I have these 2. Yeah.
Oh, those are nice.
Yeah. I love my Stripers, but I have more Braves hats than I have brewery hats probably.
There you go.
Yeah. I even have this is one of my favorites. It took me forever to find one though on New Era, but it's the Boston Braves one.
I've got that one actually.
Yeah. I love that hat.
I may not have it up top, but I've got
it's all good.
I've got quite a few because my shelf behind me on the top, I have all my hats or a lot of my hats.
Hmm.
Some of the other bigger items that just wouldn't fit on a shelf. But they keep
Yeah.
giving us bobbleheads in the press box, which is very cool. I will
Yeah.
keep it out. That's a very nice perk on the giveaway nights because I don't have to go stand in line. But
Yeah.
at some point, they were just all stacked up in boxes, and I'm like, I got to do something with these. So I went out and got the big shelf, and I've tried to arrange it with bobbleheads and fun stuff. And you can see, let's see, up over here, this is the VHS for the 1991 World Series. There's
Well,
a
I have the
rare
VHS for the 95.
I have
I've got
that
it.
one too.
Yeah.
I've gotta find that one though. I've got some books and baseballs and things, and a lot of other memorabilia. I got John Smoltz's spikes over here. Tom
Nice.
Glavine's hat from his final year.
Is
Uh,
that the Chipper Jones ball player book? Because
yes,
I remember the spine because I have it on my bookshelf
yeah,
over here.
got quite a few books right behind me as well, and I've got a ton of programs going all the way back to I think it's 1948 to the Boston Braves for some
Oh, that's awesome.
scorecards and things like that. Just stuff I love to pick up and look through.
Oh,
'Cause the nostalgia from those
that's awesome.
old scorecards and yearbooks and things. We
Yeah.
don't get that kind of stuff, and it's going to be even fewer and further between as we go forward
Yeah.
because everything's so digital now. But
Hmm.
being able to lay your hands on what feels like a little piece of history
Oh,
is a lot.
yeah. And I love that ATL sign you have back there because that reminds me of the old like Superstation, the old TBS kind of like the way
Yeah,
it would look.
so
Yeah.
RotoWare, who you may have followed a lot of the
Yeah.
work that they're putting out, the great T-shirts that they have.
Yeah.
He sent me the sticker because he made
That's awesome.
ATL TBS style logo shirt that I
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw it.
put it on my microphone just for a lot of fun. But I've got a lot of cool stuff going on. If you're curious, the Glavin Glavin Maddox Smoltz Avery shirt I got from the 7-6 Apparel Company. Anybody
Yeah.
out there that would like to get one of those, you can use
Okay.
the code Grant and you get 20% off your order. So you can always
Oh,
check that out as well. If you're looking for that little hit of 90s nostalgia, they've got
I'm
some great stuff over there.
I'm
7-6.
gonna have to do it for sure.
Yeah, definitely do that. Tell them I sent you.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about the deadline a second ago. I did want to ask, where do you think Otani goes? Because I know he's the big fish.
I don't know that he's going to move. I feel like it's a 50-50 proposition. If you're the Angels and you trade him, I think that closes the door on him having any future there. I don't think it's we'll trade him and then we'll try to sign him back. Once
Yeah.
it's the open market,
Oh yeah.
you're talking about a guy that is a $30 million pitcher and a $30 million hitter.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at, I think, minimum of $500 to $600 million contract if things go the way that he wants them to go, if he finishes this season, because he's doing stuff that we are never going to see again in our lifetime.
Definitely not.
I will be happy to be proven wrong by the next guy that comes along and hits the way he hits and pitches the way he pitches, because it took us over a century to get one who even was able to put up comparable numbers to what Babe Ruth did. And then keep in mind, Babe Ruth was such a good hitter that eventually he just stopped pitching, and he didn't stop pitching in like his 30s. He stopped pitching after the first handful of years in the big leagues and just became, the greatest slugger of his era and maybe any era, if you go back and look at those numbers, but that's a different debate for a different time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Otani, I think we're talking about, at least a $50 million a year offer
Probably.
for salary, because I mean, you've got Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander making $40+ million. What does that tell you that Otani should be worth? So
exactly. And every time I think of Scherzer, I just think of like him. I felt like he always just talked trash about the Braves, and I'm just like, man,
he was just always on those opposing teams. I mean, you got to respect him for what he does. I mean, he's a ferocious competitor, and I feel like he kind of goes on that list of players that when he's on the other side, you find him to be a little bit dislikable, or they just feathers.
The players you love to hate.
But if they're on your team, you're going to bat for this guy.
It's like Dennis Rodman or something like that.
Maybe not quite as controversial.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's one of those where you love him if he's your guy, you kind of hate him if he's somebody else's.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's, but going back to Otani, sorry, I went off a little thing there. But yeah, Otani, I feel like, what he's doing is crazy. I mean, I know that they've said that if they're contending this year, they're going to keep him. But then you almost feel like if you let him walk, or if you let him, if you don't make the playoffs and you don't trade him.
Yeah, that's the conundrum that they're in. I think that's the deal. But for everybody that's like, well, you trade him and you sign him back. I mean, there aren't many times you can think of, especially for a premium player, where you trade them and then they sign right back. That's just not a thing that goes on.
It really doesn't.
For somebody that, is a notable free agent or maybe even almost a star level player. I mean, this isn't Kenny Lofton gets traded to the Braves, then re-signs with Cleveland because he loved being there.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that he wanted to be back in Cleveland pretty quickly, I think, upon his arrival in Atlanta. But
Yeah.
yeah, Shohei Ohtani's just in a different category, and whatever team that goes out there and spends the money, whether it's Steve Cohen's Mets or some other big club, I mean, the Texas Rangers have spent an awful lot of money, and that tells me that there are clubs out there that you may not expect right now that could
Hmm.
decide in the offseason, hey, we're going to go in on this, and I mean, he'd look cool in a Braves uniform. Not going to lie, could they
I'd
figure
love
out
it.
a way to
Yeah.
make that whole thing work? I don't know, but
Yeah.
it'd be exciting. And I think that's what excites people about it is we've never seen anyone reach free agency like Ohtani because we've never seen anybody like Ohtani. So I'm
Yeah.
fascinated to see what happens when he does get to free agency because I can't think of any particular way that there's going to be an extension signed before he gets to test the market.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it was almost like Aaron Judge last year. I kind of feel like where it's kind of he was waiting, he was betting on himself.
Yeah, and he did. And,
Yeah.
and kudos to him. And for these players, I mean, they get X amount of a finite amount of opportunities to, really test their worth on the open market. And
Yeah.
you can understand when you get to your free agent year why it might behoove you to do that. But it is
Hmm.
a bit of a risk, but hey, it paid off big time for Aaron Judge. And, having a history making season didn't hurt at all.
Oh, definitely not. And even like when it comes to salary cap, it's like the Braves are just like I love what they're doing. I love what Anthopoulos has done, and it's like, but it's not. It's crazy. But it's like highway robbery almost. I feel like with some of the players we got. But
I don't know because if everybody was out there doing it, signing their
true.
young players, because teams just they haven't been historically willing to put forth the money and
Early.
guarantee it immediately.
Yeah.
So that's why you have all these
True.
guys play 3 very undervalued years, then have to go through the arbitration process for 3,
Hmm.
maybe 4 years, depending on when they came up.
Yeah.
And then they get to free agency and they're a little bit, if you're a college player at that point, you're getting to free agency at like 30 years old. I mean, Dansby Swanson shot through the minor leagues so fast. He was
Yeah.
still in his 20s when he got to free agency. But I don't
Yeah.
blame Dansby for taking a nearly $180 million offer because coming into the year, I would have thought that 5 and 95 or 5 and 100 ish would probably
Yeah.
be the deal done for him to stay with the Braves. But hey,
Hmm.
that market changed and it good for him and for the Braves. The Orlando Arcia story has been a pretty good one. So,
Yeah.
baseball, life goes on, baseball goes on. And
Yeah.
for the Braves, they're just fortunate that they had a plan B that was maybe a little bit better than we gave them credit for.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's something like credit to Alex and Anthopoulos being able to make these deals. Like even like with Michael Harris, like he's already because there's always a time where like sometimes or that they call it a sophomore slump, but honestly I
Yeah.
feel like even Austin Riley went through that, but he grinded through, so he knew that Austin was going to be able to, he if he
You
did
bet
go
on him.
through another slump, he'd be able to get over it.
It's like you said, when a player bets on himself for free agency, the club's clearly betting on these guys as well, and making the calculated decisions where they
Hmm.
can on who they want to really invest in and, who's going to be able to show them what they need to see. And Austin Riley ended up with the biggest contract in franchise history. And
Yeah.
good for him because it came, 3 months after Matt Olson signed the biggest contract in franchise history. And
Hmm.
Freddie Freeman was left looking for somewhere else to play. I mean, it's just been
Yeah.
a lot of things that have gone on. And I know that's a whole different topic for a whole nother show, but
Yeah, we
no,
might have to have another conversation just about that.
it's been interesting, and I know we're going to wrap up here, but
Yeah.
it's been interesting to watch the way that a lot of these things have played out from the young player perspective. But guaranteeing that money, if
Yeah.
clubs want to go out there and do it, then they'll go out there and do it. But you can't, cry about the Braves coming in and offering guarantees rather than 3 underpaid years and then 3 or 4 years worth of arbitration where they might
100%.
get what they want or they might get hurt, or who knows what could happen, or they might end up
Yeah.
traded. But this was a chance to build around Ozzy Albies and Ronald Acuna and Matt Olson and
Yeah.
Austin Riley and Spencer Strider and Michael Harris, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But when
Yeah.
you extend all these players, there's a lot that's built up into that. So Sean Murphy, that's the other one.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of good things going on for the Braves, and stability for this window of contention that the Braves have is something that I think entices other players from the outside to want to come be a part of. And that I think
Mhm.
allows you to sign the veteran player to maybe a shorter term arrangement for more money
Yeah.
because it's the piece that helps everybody win. And, you put yourself in a position to contend every year and put the best possible roster on the field. And I think the Braves have just worked that problem a little bit differently. And maybe everybody doesn't love it, but hey, if the players didn't want it, they would not sign these contracts. I can point that out. Like, this is not
Yeah.
it's not a hostage situation. It's
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
that serious. I mean, this is the opportunity for some of these guys to make generational wealth. And I don't
Yeah,
know why we have to have a conversation that goes much beyond that, because
exactly.
it's a difference in signing extensions and signing free agent contracts. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but people like to people love like clickbait and stuff like that,
Of course.
and
Of course.
and it's like for me, like yeah, if they're willing to do it, like and they're willing to to make these or to take these contracts or whatever, and be able to just like you said, generational wealth, be able to have
Yeah.
something like that, have some stability because they're not making anything in the minor leagues.
Yeah. No, that's the truth. The dream is to
Yeah,
get to the big leagues. And then once you get there, the dream is to stay there for as long as you can.
yeah, and I mean, and they're all going to make their money, but like I remember growing up as a kid, like thinking like, oh, we're going to trade for JD Drew, we're going to trade for these guys, and they're there for 3 months and they're gone.
Yeah.
Where
One
when
season.
now, yeah, when players come in, I feel like they want to stay, they
Mhm.
want to be a part of that culture, and I don't like as a kid, I don't ever remember it being that way, other
Yeah.
than guys that had already been there, like Chip, Glavy, Maddox or Smoltz, they wanted to be there
Yeah. And they
or
stay.
Andrew. Yeah. And then, but even Andrew left after he hit 51 or whatever it was in 2004 or five, or whatever that year that was.
Yeah. He left after '07.
Oh,
And
seven? Yeah,
yeah.
something like that. But whenever he hit all
Fresco.
those home
Smoltz
runs.
left at the end. Glavin left at the end. I mean, Maddox
Hmm.
was a Cub when he came up, and he eventually left. But
Yeah.
you get that long period of time where you get to play together, and the Braves have a group that could do that again. And what
Yeah.
can we do over the course of 7, 10 more years of being together? Hopefully, we'll all find out it's something good, because
Yeah. Hopefully
thus
we'll get a couple more during that
yeah,
time.
thus far they've given us a lot to enjoy.
For sure. And I don't want to keep you much longer, but I just had a couple other little tidbits I did want to ask. Your favorite Braves team? I know we kind of touched on the 2003 team for me, but you have a favorite Braves team outside of the World Series team?
Yeah, I'll go with the '91 team, because that
Yeah.
was the club that really just made me see what was possible in the world of baseball. I mean, because it was so many years of just the Braves weren't really a factor in the bigger picture of baseball. It was just, hey, the Braves are over here, they're playing. You go to a couple of games every summer, and that's kind of it. And then at that point, they traded Dale Murphy, so I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this anymore. But then all of a sudden, they
Hmm.
went all the way to the World Series, and that that
Yeah.
that group of players, I've had a chance to meet a lot of them, talk to a lot of them, but when they came to the big leagues, they didn't lose in the minors. So they
Yeah.
already had started to create that culture and expectation of it. We're going to come up and win, because
Yeah.
that's what we've done. That's what we've experienced. The
Hmm.
Justices, Gants, and Smoltzes, and Glavins, and Lemkes, and Blausers, and all these guys that came up, they were, winning was kind of a thing they'd done in the minor leagues, and it continued on after that with Chipper and Klesko and Javi Lopez and all those guys. So those early '90s teams, all of them, are pretty special to me, just from a where my love of the Braves and baseball really took off and went to another level. And when I started thinking about, man, it would be really cool to just do baseball for a living.
Yeah.
I'll always think of those teams, and they'll always hold a special place, even if they didn't go all the way.
Yeah.
Still, for me, it was as good as it could get.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite player or favorite Braves player that may not have been as popular?
Uh, I joked when Guillermo Heredia left. He may be my favorite Brave of all time, one of my favorite Braves ever, because of what he brought to the club, and it went well beyond the statistics. He just had
Yeah.
a lot,
His
behind the
sword.
scenes. But my favorite Braves player of all time is Dale Murphy.
Okay.
I've had an opportunity to do a lot of things with Murph over the years, and really appreciate that. And a lot of times when people tell you, don't meet your heroes, you'll be disappointed. You will not be disappointed if you get a chance to meet Dale Murphy. He is so engaging and gives so much to the fans and the people that followed the Braves and him for so long. It's a really cool thing. So if you come to town and get a chance to go to Murph's restaurant and he's there, especially, he's just so gracious to meet and talk with fans and tell them stories about those days. And I hope one day the baseball world will kind of get it right and go ahead and get Murph in the Hall of Fame, because he deserves it, not only
Yeah,
as a player, but as a person. I'd love to see
he
that.
does for sure. Mine would probably be, and it's like probably not a popular pick, but I loved Mike Hampton when he had his run with the Braves. Like being a lefty and being able like I always felt like I was like, oh, Mike Hampton, he can hit and he could, he was a modern day Shohei, but he
Yeah, he's a
obviously
great athlete.
couldn't do what Shohei does. But when I would play like Home Run King on my Nintendo GameCube in like 2002, I would always use Mike Hampton or something like that. But he was one of my favorites. And Javi Lopez too. I loved him. Last thing before I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I was called locals only. So if you're in the Atlanta or Cobb County area, your favorite local like breweries, or you can just say local spots that maybe that aren't too touristy, and or a local bar or something like that.
Gosh, I mean, there's there's a lot of different places. I mean, if you're doing the baseball thing, the Battery's going to have a lot of opportunities for you to. I'll just throw it
Cool.
out there. You want a good burger? Go to Murph's. Go to Dale Murphy's restaurant and enjoy that.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Grant. I really appreciate being on the show and just answering a DM and being able to chat with me about some Braves baseball.
Hey, no problem.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, I know this episode was kind of was for me essentially because of the talking about the Braves for that long. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back on the beer talk this next week. I'll actually be the interviews I can't think right now. Sorry, David from Bone Check Barbecue. We talked a little bit of beer. We talked about his barbecue spot or his barbecue pop up that he does at different breweries. So that's going to be a fun one. But I hope you guys have a great week. And I'm not going to close it out with the bro code this week. I figured since it's the All-Star game, there's a lot of baseball, a lot of baseball talk right now. I'm going to close it out with a little quote from a baseball movie. And the quote is, "It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great." From A League of Their Own, one of my favorites. It's a banger movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Take care, Tap Fam. Hope you enjoyed the episode.